APU. American Public University is proud to present The Everyday Scholar.
Hello and welcome to our Voices in the Field podcast series, brought to you by the APUS Sports Management Program. My name is Jim Reese, and along with my fabulous colleague, Dr. Brittany Jacobs, we'll be your co-hosts for today's program. Hi, Britt.
Hey, everybody. How are you?
Doing great, thanks. And our special guest, Mr. Scott Carter, will be here in a few seconds. Britt, I was trying to think back over the last, 2 years that we've been doing these podcasts. I don't think that we've had someone that has been currently working in college athletics. Is that correct?
I don't think so. Scott's a first.
Yeah, I'm sure he can bring some great, perspective on what's going on in the world of college athletics. So, Scott, thank you. Welcome, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. Scott is the Assistant AD for Event and Game Management at the University of Notre Dame, and we look forward to getting to know you a little bit, Scott.
No, good morning, guys. Thanks for having me. This is always awesome. Good to chat with you, Jim, and obviously, Britt, always a pleasure to see you. Britt and I go way back, so always a pleasure to chat.
We're really happy to have you. Would you be kind enough to start off with just a little bit of a background or career path of how you got to where you're at today?
Sure. So it seems it's gone a lot faster than it really has. Much like a lot of the people listening, I was a sport management major myself back in the day. I originally from Virginia Beach, Virginia, so I had my first start in sports and wanting to work in sports, not really knowing where that would go. I spent 3 summers and coming out of high school and college working for a AAA team in Norfolk in the clubhouse. So all the glamorous things of doing laundry and cleaning shoes and things like that. To initiate yourself into the sport business, I think it's a great start because it's the not glamorous side, long hours, and then going to school during the day. So it was a good balance. But from there, I went to West Virginia University and did sport management there. Segued my baseball experience from Norfolk to 2 years as a head student manager for the baseball team there, which was a really worthwhile opportunity to kind of not be a student athlete myself, but very much be involved in that kind of life for a little bit as an undergraduate. I wanted to kind of get more inside of the behind the scenes, the operational kind of side of things, which really kind of appealed to me. So from there, I went from Morgantown to grad school at the University of Texas, did my master's in sport management there. While I was there, I also spent 2 years working in their facilities and operations. So it's a very cool opportunity to very much get involved in football game day. I don't know how many people out there have been to a track meet with 20,000 people, but that's Texas relays. Things like that is very cool experiences. They're never not indicative of everywhere else you may go in college athletics, but to see that is a very cool place to start. So I was there for my 2 years, and then I went back east for a year to be a coordinator in facilities operations events at the University of Maryland. That was a very cool experience. So once again, a very introductory level kind of here are your sports. You're working day to day with specific sport programs, facilities. So I feel like I did a lot of different things. It's the first part of really getting to hire and manage kind of guest services teams and staffing like that. So sitting through my first month was basically just interviewing people to fill out a staff of a couple hundred people to work on football game days. So back in the day when you were answering voicemails and putting things, work posts or work wanted ads in the Washington Post, those kinds of things, that was really cool. That was a really great introductory experience. Come in, good program they had there, get a year of experience, kind of move on. So from there, I went from not too far down the highway, down 81 to James Madison University I was there for almost about 4.5 years, anywhere from assistant director to director of event management. So that was really where expanding my role a little more into a lot more football duties, men's and women's basketball, over time built up kind of a full-time staff in addition to hiring students and practicums and interns and all that kind of stuff. Budget responsibility. So really growing that over 4.5 years. And that was a wonderful experience there. They've got a great campus, a great department, and they've grown a bunch over the years. So that was cool. I think at the time, and then towards the end there, I started down at Auburn in Alabama. I was there for 6 years, also director of event management. So a large part in football game day, men's basketball myself, a couple different sports, segued through all things metal detectors and growing men's basketball program and success, and softball, very big down there too, that, hosting things there. And then obviously all things COVID down there as well. So stopping and starting and restarting, and how do you not just focus on managing life in general, but how do you get back to the silly notion of let's start playing sports again? So that was a very interesting process down south. I was there for about 6 years. So it really, really kind of fit my general career path of wanting to get back to a larger institution athletic department. So kind of career goal of mine. From there, my friends back at Maryland reached back out and said, hey, we've got a position. Do you want to come back as a director of facilities operation events? Be more entrenched in football, because I think that's the kind of next step in kind of event management is how do you get more into football at a D1 level. So that's kind of my career goal there. So I was there for a year, and then just lo and behold, I joke with people all the time, how did you end up at Notre Dame? Well, I go, well, a job popped up at Notre Dame. And when it says assistant AD of event management, and they want you to come in and run football at Notre Dame, then that's a job you apply for. So I did, and I was lucky enough to get it. So, and that's how I ended up here. And it's been, it's June of 25 now. So we just finished my second year here. It seemed, like I said, it's gone by a lot quicker than it doesn't seem like it's been 2 years, but it has. But it's been a really cool experience here. A lot of different things you get to do here. Just with it being Notre Dame, it's a very cool kind of campus, as you could probably expect. Really just personally expanding my kind of professional growth through more of the non-cool side of working in athletics, budget management and staffing and things like that.
Scott, thanks for sharing all of that. It's such a cool career trajectory. When you started out in sport management, did you think this was going to be your path? Did you kind of know you were going to go into the event side or the operations side of sport?
I always tell people, I think it's especially starting out, and especially when I talk to whether it's undergrad classes or students reaching out for projects on LinkedIn or whatever it is, I always tell them it's very important early on to figure out what you don't like. And I think that a lot of times that'll come first. I can be a very outgoing, talkative person, and sometimes I'm not. But I think earlier on, getting involved behind the scenes, I think the first thing kind of drew me as an undergrad was I really enjoyed getting to know how the teams work, how the coaches work, and how backwards engineering it through. As a student manager, I'm running up to the PA booth about music and things like that. Not something you anticipate doing. I really enjoyed the logistics and the planning of it. I tell people all the time, I'm too young to be quoting the A-team, but I really do love it when a plan comes together. But it's really my job to account for when the plan does not come together. I really like the event management portion more than the facilities portion. They're both a lot of places joined at the hip. But I think over time, as a lot of departments, not just mine, across athletics, have gotten much more specialized. There are departments now that were not even on people's minds 20 years ago, whether that's social media or nutrition or sports psychology or student athlete service kind of things. So many things have just blown up. Every Power One school basically has their own TV station now, the ability to broadcast their own games, things like that. So I think that's what I've looked for. And I think for students that I think who are thinking about what do they want to do, you're probably going to find out what you don't like to do before you figure out what you like to do. What I tell students who are especially on campus, in person at places, take advantage of your surroundings. I go, the secret's out now. As Britt, you and I kind of look back at where we were 20 years ago versus where we are now. I go, the secret's out about sport management and working in sports now. Back when I was looking for opportunities, and I didn't even really know what I was going to major in college until probably the end of my junior year of high school. So you look at that and you kind of figure out, everyone knows you can work in sports now. This is not a really well-kept secret. You don't have to know somebody who knows somebody to, hey, I know this kid who wants to work in sports. Take a look around. Don't wait till you're almost done with your undergrad career to get involved in your athletic department if that's what you want to do. I reached out to Texas before I got into Texas. But I said, hey, I'm looking at this. What do you want to do? I've reached out about a lot of those initial opportunities because that's what I knew I wanted to do. There's probably a lot more public things out there now. People are looking for students to come work on game days in the office. Interns, practicums, the sport management curriculums are probably a lot more now than they were 20 years ago. So, and what they require. Because by the time you graduate, that's when your friends are now the competition, so to speak. So you're trying to put yourself ahead and establish those connections and the networking and things like that. So, even though now, like if I know a kid who's worked for our departments for a couple of years now, is very good as an undergraduate student, like that's where you pull that kind of GA workforce from. That's where you pull the postgraduate intern force from. So those are the kind of people you're going to go to bat for later on. So yeah, I think it's not quite initially what I thought, but I think over time, definitely the planning and logistics of, I said it's my way of still getting to play quarterback, even though that stopped 21 years ago. It's still kind of the way I get to be a part of a team environment, whether it's something small or where it's planning the college football playoff. Things differ, things change, but that's kind of what I enjoy about, and that's kind of the advice I would give to other people.
I think that's great, Scott. One thing I wanted to come back to that you just said, you were talking about taking advantage of what's around you. Of course, we're a 100% online institution. So what recommendation would you have to our students who, are spread out all across the country and all across the world? How would they get involved in sport during their academic careers?
Yeah, I think the first step that I always encounter is reaching out to people. I think, especially if you're spread out or remote, I think the first thing that you can do is at least start to, if you're not super familiar with it, which a lot of people aren't when they start, is kind of try to educate yourself a little bit and reach out to people. So if you have no idea what Scott Carter does for a living, which sometimes a lot of people don't, I still can't explain it correctly to my mom, but reach out, email saying, hey, I'm interested in athletics. Could you tell me a little bit about what you do? And I've had a handful of people that are like, hey, they're not really like, I'm all for event management. This is what I know what I want to do. I'm just trying to get a general pulse of what a lot of different people do. And I think that's a real helpful thing to talk to people, establish connections, depending if you're Virginia Beach kid, East Coast. So if you're over the military, hey, what's around you? What city? Maybe you're a little more remote location. Maybe there's not a lot there, but if you can stumble down the street to a university, whether it's P5, group of whatever, D3, they're going to have something. They're probably going to, hey, yeah, come help, whether that's something they can pay you for or volunteer or just come shadow. I think it's just taking those initial steps with what's around you. Once again, if nothing's around you, reach out to people. And there's probably other departments and things you can do maybe remotely. I mean, if you're a graphic design person or things maybe that aren't necessarily my forte, you can do those on a computer a lot of different places versus my job isn't exactly a remote job. I have to be somewhere. I can do a lot of it on the computer and we can sit on Zoom calls and do a lot of our planning like we do. But at a certain point, I have to go walk out on that football field on Saturday and do some certain things. So yeah, I think it's just getting out there and kind of just doing some research and familiarizing yourself with what's around you. And if people or you're military based or whatever you may be, do that kind of, 360 assessment of where you're at physically and then kind of go from there. And then as you move around, you'll kind of start to establish a base and know different people and hopefully that'll build.
Okay, Scott, just for the benefit of our students, let's just go right down the list here just as a reinforcement. One, if you do something that you don't necessarily, it's not a waste of time if you don't like something. It narrows your career path. That's an excellent point. I'm so glad you shared that. Initiative, which you showed the initiative to get involved in. You mentioned some examples, even a local high school. I mean, I used to be a high school assistant AD. We were two people running an entire athletic department in the high school. They always need help. So you can always find something, in your area if you take the initiative to go and do it. Go where the jobs are. You seem to have done that geographically. If you limit yourself, you're going to limit your job opportunities. And so you really need to go where the work is. So,
and I think that's key when you're younger is being 38 now, it's much easier to bounce around when you're 23. And now different life situations for different people, they may want to stay somewhere. Well, I've told our interns yeah, you might be kind of, Midwest or Mid-Atlantic, but keep your options open. Move around a little bit, and then eventually you'll find something that'll stick.
The last thing was networking. Now, when you moved around from your different jobs, was it your network that you used for that, or did you just apply for positions?
Honestly, most of the time it's just applying for positions, looking for schools. I mean, I West Virginia popped up because it was on a list of sport management programs on the Princeton Review website or whatever, and same thing for Texas. From there, it's really just job boards. And now, like I said, there's a lot more out there now than there was originally. It's not just like the NCAA jobs, it's Teamwork Online, it's higher ed jobs, it's the D1 ticker emails of the world, which I fully recommend people sign up for those things just to stay in the loop. Sometimes it's not connections, but I think for me personally, it's jobs pop up. And I think it's the self-assessment of where I am at my career and what am I looking for. And, when it's time to move on, just like a lot of things in life, it's kind of time to move on. So when you're younger and you can move around, you can kind of bounce around a little bit. Then once you're a little older and you're married, it's a different talk and a different decision. So you got some other things to consider. But it's been, I think the connections for me, it's sometimes I've known people at different places. So I could always reach out to, Britt, for example, if she was at a school, and say, hey, Britt, what's your experience working here? Or do you know people? Or what's the word on the street? I think that's where networking has come in of kind of figure out what it's like to work there? Or can you connect me with someone that could ask some questions to? I think I've had friends from grad school who have reached out to different schools saying, what do you think about this place? What's this job? What's the setup? What's the expectation? I think that's helped me craft of whether you do or do not apply for jobs. So I think over time, networking isn't just people you may have worked for, but I think it's also the people you work with, because now the people you were hanging out with when you're 24 as assistant directors and coordinators of school are now your assistant associate ADs at a lot of different places. So I've got a handful of friends at different schools that I can ask very simple event management questions. Like, we're going to start selling alcohol here at games here in the fall. So I can just ask a bunch of Big Ten and ACC schools, hey, when are you stopping selling beer in the third quarter? Like, it's a very baseline question, but they'll all email me back in a couple hours and say, here's what we're doing. And I think that's just a great functional, operational network to have as well.
It's good to hear that, actually, because it's a little different than most of my experiences that you're using those connections to open doors and, maybe get your resumes at the top of the pile so it gets a look. But it's good to hear that those other resources are out there. So thanks for sharing that.
And I just wanted to highlight one of the other pieces that you said, Scott, which is that the people that are around you day to day, whether it's your classmates or the people when you're just starting out in your career, they're so important. They're going to be the people that are in your career for the next 10, 15 years. And it might not be directly. You might not talk to them every day, but they're still there as a resource. So when you're sitting in a classroom, make sure you get to know the people all around you. They're a hugely valuable resource.
What's really helped me over the last decade and a half now is then you get looped into more professional development opportunities and conferences and things like that. There's a wide variety depending on what your forte and your area of work is, but that's where you then start to build more connections to, not just working with people at your school, but people within your conference at your peer institutions. And then from there, conferences over the summer, it's kind of the time for it. You meet new people there, you do the old business card trade, things like that. But that's just going to help you, whether you might not talk to them immediately, but you always know, oh, I met Dr. Britt Jacobs at the conference over the summer. She seemed like she knew XYZ. I'm interested in that, or I could use some more info. I'll reach out.
Please stay with us. We'll be right back with our special guest, Mr. Scott Carter.
At American Public University, we believe higher education is not one size fits all. That's why we offer 200 modern programs that build on your knowledge and fit your schedule. Because we believe universities should adapt to the needs of students, not the other way around. American Public University, within reach, without limits. Online classes start every month. Learn more at AmericanPublicU.com.
Thanks for staying with us. We're back with today's guest, Scott Carter. Now let's get back to the discussion. Scott, have you found, and you mentioned the brand, the Notre Dame brand a little bit ago. Are there added expectations there because of that? I mean, are you finding that in your job experience?
I think the expectations, obviously, all things Notre Dame, and, you can get wrapped up in football a lot because that's really driven a lot of what the athletic department is over the years, just being one of the first brands 70 years ago. So it's very interesting to look at how the brand has evolved versus maybe, athletic departments who've really been kind of what they are 30 years, 50 years. The top expectations here is obviously the student athletes and the student athlete experience. And I think you'll find in a lot of places that's everyone's key focus of how do you continue to put our resources into developing them as people and developing them as students. And I will say this, it's not just the tagline. This is very much a student athlete. The student is the first part of the word at this school. And I think that's really cool here. It's much different. They're all in the same dorms, the students, it's very much intertwined. And that's kind of intentional over the years. And I know our athletic director still talks about that a lot. So that's a cool dynamic here. I always say, I can help outside the lines on the field while the clock's running. Maybe not so much. Is it my job to make sure the clock is running? Yes, it is. But on the field, leave it up to the coaches. We're here to support them, the student athlete. This is not just an athletics event on Saturday. We're an hour and a half outside Chicago, but we've hosted the Winter Classic. We've hosted 2 nights Garth Brooks. We're hosting Zach Bryan in the fall. We've done high-level international soccer friendlies. That's not something a lot of places can just pop up and do. And I think that's a kudos to long-term planning of university administration and athletics to go, this is where we want to get to. We joke that our visiting team football locker room is the nicest visiting team football locker room I've ever seen in my life. It's not just a bunch of, wooden lockers and some stone. It's It's nice because you build what you want to become. And that's kind of the expectation of Notre Dame is if we want to be this pinnacle of what it means to host things and do these events, we can't have this old rundown, looks like it's a 100-year-old locker room. We need to be able to put Manchester United or Chelsea or Celtic FC in this locker room and everything will be great. So that's kind of the level that Notre Dame kind of comes with it. And I think that's been pretty cool to see in person of like, yeah, it's not just Scott's walking in with 7 football games. It's like, well, we're going to host some pretty big things here too. And I think that's been pretty cool.
Very cool. Scott, talk to me about the biggest challenges you're currently facing in your role.
Well, the event business, it stays busy. And I think at times working with our staff here, we want to, I think, especially back in the day, it's here's your 6 sports. You can, you'll see your family at Christmas, or you'll see them in the summer. I think the biggest challenge now, especially coming out of COVID, and I think as I've come up in my managerial career, if you will, is trying to look out for that kind of work-life balance. Work-life balance was not a term back in the day when we were starting out. It was like, welcome to sports. You work in sports now. You're going to do the sports. And I think that's something I think a lot of people, especially coming out of COVID, are a little more purposeful with. Now, I'd always joke, I go, we're not in the right business of event management and live events to be remote or working at home. I go, this is our slow time right now.
Your weekends aren't going to be free most of the time.
Right. Apologies to the family events or whatever I may have to miss because I have to work football or basketball. I don't miss all of them. You can miss them. We've come to learn that. But I think that's been a balance of how do we spread things out, knowing, like you said, the expectation of supporting our programs, supporting our student athletes and our coaching staffs, and putting on a event of our expectation for fans, families, whoever, folks in the community to come in and attend. There's, 220 roughly home athletic events last year. And that's not counting, quote unquote, special events. That's not counting the graduations. That's not counting special events, banquets, receptions, whatever else. So you don't want to burn out your staff. You want to take care of your folks. They're doing a good job. So back them up so they can represent themselves in the department to the best they can. I think that's the big thing. I think you get into cycles over the years. You get through, okay, it's June. What does that mean? It's August. What does that mean? It's November as sports start up and overlap and things like that. So you get into a routine. You kind of know what to expect as you get older. But definitely the biggest challenge is how do we do everything we need to do to the quality that we want to do it, but also while taking care of ourselves. I think that's the biggest thing I think of a lot.
Scott, are you guys staffing up with that many events? Do you just, bring in a lot of event staff, or are you working with, a year-round staff? How does that look for you?
In the event management department here in athletics, we have a kind of our core group of event managers. So right now it's myself and 2 or 3 other staff and intern, postgraduate intern, so to speak. So we kind of divvy up the sports a little bit throughout the year. So that's kind of the main contact. Now, if you look at, obviously everyone's involved with football. That's what takes most of my time is the football element of it. And obviously you get into your basketballs and we have men's hockey here. Those are kind of the bigger 4 operations. As you get into some of the other Olympic sports, we generally have our point of contact there as the game day event manager. So they're handling that. And obviously we have a in-house usher group who's been here. Some of them, as they tell me, have been doing this longer than I've been alive, which is true. They do a lot of the ticket taking and the gates and things like that. So there are some very good people doing that as their kind of side job, weekend job, who have a lot of years of just internal knowledge of how things work. So that it's super helpful coming in. They're eyes and ears, and they'll come find you if something's up. So that helps out a lot of our smaller sports. So smaller Olympic sports, it's not that big of a footprint. You have your event management person, you have your fan experience. I won't say marketing as much. It's called fan experience here. Fan experience contact, your athletics communications contacts, your kind of core group, a lot of those sports. And that really kind of runs itself. So the larger ones, that's when you're bringing in much larger usher group, your external vendor for game day staffing who runs the magnetometers and things like that. More security staff than not. And that's where the footprint really blows up and gets a lot bigger. So, but for our core group, it's really just we're working with our team, working with the other team, working with the officials. Can everyone park? Is everything working? Are you all talking to each other? We're just trying to make sure that the trains are running on time and we're in a good spot to be successful.
It's pretty incredible when you think about how many events that you and your team run a year with such a small core group.
It is funny because it's all, you got your fall sport, you got your kind of winterish sport, and you got your spring sport. Sometimes, depending how big it is, you might have 2 going on at the same time. We want to host postseason conference events. We're going to bid on NCAA events. You can host 4 to 5 additional men's soccer games if you play it right, but that leads you right in the beginning of December. So you're ending out football, you're overlapping Thanksgiving holidays, you got basketballs and hockey, and so that's the chess piece. So yeah, sometimes it's like, how are we doing all of this? Then sometimes it's weeks where it's like, how do we have nothing this week? So it's a give and take for sure.
Scott, you mentioned in a couple of your responses that string of teamwork, how important that is. I know I've shared this story before, but it's relevant because it changed the way I looked at being involved in events. When we were getting ready for Super Bowl 32, we were in San Diego and I was in ticketing, and, we had a couple hotel rooms and to plan and all that. And our boss came in and had just spoken to the owner. He gathered us all up and he said, Mr. Bolin wants you to know that you can have an impact on the outcome of this game. Even though it's a small one, your job is to manage distractions for the players. And tickets are a big distraction. Make it as user-friendly as possible. Let them concentrate on the game. And, that changed the way I looked at things because, yeah, it's a very small part, but it is a team. It's everybody has to come together to make it work. And so thank you for highlighting that. That's a really important part. Well, Scott, we're winding down here. Any last recommendations for students or things that we may not have discussed that you think would help students in their planning for their careers in sports?
I think what we're doing now and things like this, obviously, I think this is a really cool platform to hear from other people. I mean, I listened to the one you did recently with James DeMeo. I forget if we've crossed paths, but I definitely know the name. I've seen him pop up, whether it's LinkedIn and other things. So I listened to that one. I think that's really cool. And he's got a wealth of experience. So I think it's really cool. I need to go back and listen to the Billy Bean one too. I thought that was really cool. I didn't get to listen to that one yet. But I think things like this of sport management programs, starting where you can. And a lot of people, that is their educational pursuits and sport and majors and things like that. So I think it's great getting involved like this, talking to you all. And obviously, not everyone's sport management professors are former D1 athletes like Britt or worked in the ticket office at a Super Bowl like you, Jim. Those are real world applications that you guys can speak on yourselves and, help them out or bring in guest speakers and other things like that and talk to people like myself or other people you may know. I think that's really cool. It's not just reading the textbook and doing vocab tests, so to speak. It's the real world stuff. Well, I tell people all the time, because I get the question from students when I talk to them is, well, do I need to go to grad school? I go, well, that's kind of a personal decision. I think it's up to them. But I think as you continue that, reach out to people to talk to find out what you may or may not like. For me, going to grad school is something I wanted to do in general. I wanted to go get my master's degree. What I took from my master's experience is the real world experience because yes, people look at my resume at the time and go, well, it's very impressive. You got your master's degree from the University of Texas. And I go, yes, I did. But the part that gets me opportunities and interviews was I worked 2 seasons of football and 2 seasons of track, stadium operations, things like that, starting customer service programs, things of that nature. So I think it's really taking advantage of those opportunities too. I thought that was a great way for grad school to help me out as I went. So that's kind of why I pursued that opportunity. Really enjoyed my experience down there. So I think it's just really figuring out and learning. And even if you don't know anything, there can be so much, especially now walking into sports going, what do I want to do? Because there's 1,001 things you could possibly do in sports these days. And probably in the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be a bunch more. As you can all tell with current events in sports, there's a bunch of other things that we don't know quite how they'll work yet. We'll find out. And there's going to be more opportunities from that and people to manage that process. So I think just for students right now, start reaching out to people. Educate where you can. Sign up for those newsletters. There's probably a lot more remote online opportunities than I know of for them to partake in. So I think it's just really start somewhere. Don't wait around because the sooner you get that going is sooner that next thing will come.
That proactivity is so key. Just reaching out, asking those questions. You don't know what you don't know until you find out. And really talking to the people who are in the know, who have been in those spaces can make such a big difference. Yeah,
if you take the initiative and reach out, and that means the world to folks like myself to know. Because I might not always be looking because I'm doing this, got my blinders on a little bit of I know where I need to get to. But yeah, people reaching out, some of those introductory experiences might be a little bit just let's chat or shadow or walk around. But then over time, If you show interest, if you come back for day 2 or the next week or after that, then you can get a little more task-oriented and experientially based kind of things. And so, yeah, it's definitely reaching out. I think that's the big thing, because that's how I started mine. If personal experience, it's how all of mine was initial email. Sometimes you hear back, sometimes you don't. Same thing with jobs. Sometimes you hear back, a lot of times you don't. And that's another key thing. It's not anything personal or anything against you. If you don't hear back from a job application, that's just if 250 people apply for a job, you can't all personally reply to all of them. So yeah, the proactive part is just huge, and approaching the job the right way. It may not be the sexiest job in the world. Like I started cleaning shoes and doing laundry and doing dishes in a minor league clubhouse, but over time, you build on that. That thing will get you the next thing will get you the next thing. So that's kind of what I've done. That graph over time. You want that upward slope over time. That's what I always use.
Well, this is a question that Britt and I always ask to kind of wind things down. What's next for you? I know you mentioned you're not actively looking for a job, but speaking of that growth part, are there some things that you haven't done yet that you're interested in doing?
I want to enable the staff I work with, the younger staff, give them those opportunities. Not just, stuff rolls downhill, it's your job now. But no, you've earned this responsibility. Here, you can take this over now, which means I go to my bosses, and say, here are the things I'm interested in. And that happens sooner or later. Sometimes things take time and the opportunities change and things get shifted around. So you never know that things will pop up. But for me, I enjoy the event management side of it. I enjoy the logistics part of it. I can plan it from the game manager side. I can plan it from the event manager side, which are two different things in my book. But yeah, for me, I think it's continuing to expand the base, because there's a lot, especially here, there's a lot of stuff you'd never have thought of. Television contracts, apparel contracts, sport administration, recruiting. Once again, we mentioned this before the recording, all the NIL stuff. How does that impact roster management and budget? Like just the general recruiting, how do you put a team together? How do you manage that through the year? But as you get into sport administration, kind of working with that, that's kind of what I'm looking towards as the next thing. Continuing, you got a base somewhere. You got to have your base department, but then the add-on is as you get older or more experienced, and that way we can enrich the experiences for some of the other staff who've earned greater opportunities. I've done men's basketball for 13 years as well. If I can have one of my other staff as a new opportunity for them do game manager for Division I men's basketball program, that's big for them. So it all kind of connects of where I want to go and what I can help other people get to.
Well, we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with us. Britt, any last questions before we or comments?
No, I don't think so. I'm just ready to schedule Scott for his next podcast.
That sounds great. Well, again, Scott, thank you very much. And to our listeners, thank you for your continued support of our Voices in the Field podcast series. On behalf of myself, my partner Britt, and all of our colleagues from the APUS Sports Management Program, this is Jim Reese saying so long.
For more information about our university, visit us at studyatapu.com. APU, American Public University.